Sometimes our so-called right beliefs actually prevent us from taking the right action when it comes to community things. I've been challenged, I'm constantly challenged about my giving. Why is it that in general my giving is to Christian charities, to organisations that have a Christian ethos? Does God only give to Christians? Or is the God I serve a God who wants to give to everybody? Why should I not actually make a donation to the Red Crescent rather than the Red Cross? Miroslav Volf writes in Free of Charge, "The true God gives so we can become joyful givers and not just self-absorbed receivers. God the giver has made us to be givers and obliged us therefore to give. God gives so that we in human measure can be givers too. We were created to be and act like God." Ephesians 4 and 5, in the versions that I've already quoted from earlier, reads on a little further as follows. Be kind and sympathetic. Jesus has shown how God accepts us despite our faults. We should display the same generosity to one another. Just as children copy their parents, you must copy God. That means living a life of love, like Jesus. Do we practice what we preach? Do we preach what we practice? Do we rely more on our right beliefs, our orthodoxy, our insistence perhaps that we are right? Or do we put our faith also in the actions that we take, the way that we live? Do we show our faith by these things? None of us wants to be one of those who, at the end of time, Jesus turns to and says that he never knew us. But how far are we prepared to go to obey the words of Jesus? Reading some of the Australian Dave Andrews' account of his experience of simply trying to follow Jesus has made me think deeply about my own lifestyle and approach. He writes as follows. We too need to build bridges that help us to meet one another halfway, make some heart-to-heart connections and meet one another's needs in any way that we can. I remember the day that I met Pyara, an Indian who had recently arrived in Australia. Pyara was a migrant, estranged from his country, his culture and his religion. When I met him and he discovered I could speak his language, he was thrilled. But when he, a Sikh, found out that I was a Christian, he was afraid I might try to convert him. It would have been very easy for us both to play the piety game or the proselytization game and never develop a genuine friendship. However, much to his surprise, I embraced Pyara, not as a potential trophy, but as a fellow seeker after truth. I explained that we needed to support each other spiritually to survive. I suggested to him that we should tell one another stories from our different religious traditions. I'll never forget the stories Pyara told me. They were wonderful fables, beautifully told, that really inspired me. One was a traditional parable called The Sadhu and the Dog. Once there was a sadhu, a saint, who had the reputation of being a truly compassionate soul. Well, one day, the sadhu was sitting by his fireside eating his lunch when a pariah dog came up close to him and began sniffing around, scrounging for scraps from his lunch. But the sadhu was so engrossed in eating his enjoyable lunch of flatbread chapati and clarified butter ghee that he didn't notice the dog at all. Then all of a sudden, before he knew it, the hungry dog leapt over the fire, lunged at his lunch, tore a fresh hot chapati out of his hands and ran to the nullah, the drain, for cover. The sadhu, realizing what had happened, took off after the dog who had stolen his lunch and ran into the dirty drain where it had fled for cover. When they saw this, the villagers scoffed at the sadhu, saying, "We heard he was a compassionate soul, but see, the sadhu is running like a dog into the nullah to get back his chapati." They were still mocking him when the sadhu returned, all covered in mud from chasing the dog in the dirty drain. "How did you go?" the villagers asked sarcastically. "Well," the sadhu replied, "it was a hard chase, but I finally caught the dog who had taken my chapati and gave him my ghee." When they heard what the sadhu said, the villagers were stunned into silence. So the sadhu continued, "Chapatis are so much better with ghee. he said. Thank God I was able to catch the hungry little fella and give him the ghee to go with the chapati. How far are we prepared to go in working together with others? Jesus, I find, always seems to want to expand our horizons, always wants to take us further on, to deepen our lives, enrich us with opportunities that God puts in our pathways. The needs of the people around us often grow in front of our eyes. And if we try and meet those needs as individuals, or even sometimes as individual churches, are we really working in the way that our Ephesians readings suggest we should? The version that I read speaks of the roles of apostles, prophets, pastors, and teachers. All our leadership roles, as that they're all working to the same end. They want to see every Christian engaged in work that will benefit the whole community. We need that sense of moving forward together, discovering together more about God's true likeness, growing together to become completely like Jesus. We may not agree with each other on some things. We may not agree with people in our churches that we attend. We may not agree with people in other churches around us. But surely, even if we cannot agree with each other on every dotted I and crossed T, if we can agree that we love Jesus, can we put potential disagreements about right belief, what we think is orthodoxy, to one side and work together on orthopraxis, putting our faith into action, letting our deeds speak out, even sing out what God has done in our lives? And as we do so, perhaps we'll find that our understanding of other people's points of view may be changed, transformed even. We may find that our own faith will grow and mature in unexpected ways. Let us celebrate together all the good things we've been given by God. Let us discover the plans and the purposes that God has for each one of us together.